So this morning we have Dan Nelson, a very intelligent and interpretive member, speaking on the topic, the subjectivity of belief. And he said it's open forum, so you can join in this discussion afterwards. Thanks, Dan.
Right on, right on. Thanks, guys. Thank you. It's really awesome that everybody's here. It's like a big crowd. It's really exciting. A lot of awesome, beautiful people. I know the topics I pick are often big topics. So Anne was asking me what topic do I want to pick, and I figured it seems quite appropriate to talk about the idea of belief and the subjectivity of belief, because there's so many different points of view that people have that seem to be opposite. And somebody says brown rice is really bad for you. Actually, we have all these studies that prove it. And then there's another side that says, well, brown rice is really good for you, and here's all the studies that prove it. So it's really important to remember that we're kind of choosing our reality and we're projecting it out into the world. And it's kind of like a cosmic mirror. It like reflects back to us. So sometimes we don't realize we're doing it. So it's an amazing thing that somehow we all became fragmented and separated. But I know that probably almost all of us at some point have had an experience of oneness. I mean, everybody's had that experience, and maybe multiple times, maybe right now. But in that experience, we realize that we're not so separated at all. But when we think that we're separate and individual, and the ego is born, we appear like we're all separate, and like I have this point of view and you have that point of view, and what you did is not right because I disagree with that. So it's almost like a game. So it's a really big topic to talk about here, the subjectivity of belief. Like, what does it mean, And I tried to prepare for a talk about this, and it was just like, I ended up writing 20 pages of stuff. and then I looked at it, and I'm like, geez, this is like all over the place. So it sort of comes down to, kind of planting the seed of the idea of subjectivity of belief. Because what is belief? I mean, people have different religions, but when we become fixed, or when we think we're separate and we get closed-fisted, we try and protect our own individual worldview. And so in order to defend that, we have to create a distraction. Like, that's different than me, and I'm individual, and look at that person. So I think that it's helpful to try and understand, how did this all get started? Like, where did that all come from, that we think that we're all separate, or we somehow incarnate into this world? So I want it to be like an open platform to discuss this. And so what it came down to when I thought about this is like, okay, well, what is the origin of this separation? Maybe that's the right question. And I thought about all these different creation myths that I've come across over the years. And I found one of the common creation myths, and Joseph Campbell talked about this a lot, but it was this idea that we were all one. But something happened where we fragmented, and a good way to think of it is a metaphor, and we have this metaphor that we call the Big Bang. So the Big Bang is like a metaphor for everything being one, and then everything exploding into millions of separate parts. So it's kind of like when we somehow exploded, and a lot of the creation myths say that we are one with God or the universe, and then somehow we stepped outside of God and questioned God, and in that moment there was some explosion. I don't know if anybody heard these creation myths that are like that. It's kind of like the Big Bang. I mean, that's kind of like a creation myth that even modern science, believes in, and they think they're being objective by having this idea of a Big Bang. But that itself seems kind of metaphysical for our mainstream science to actually believe in this Big Bang idea, that something came from nothing. Well, that's an incredible idea itself. So that seems kind of like a very a spiritual idea, really. This idea of a Big Bang. Well, anyway, so I want to keep this open. So, is everybody familiar here with this creation myth? Has anybody heard of it? Show of hands. Anybody heard of the creation myth? Okay. Gee, almost everybody's heard of the creation myth. So then the idea goes like this. We were one with the universe, one with all. We knew ourselves. We knew that we were one with everything. When we have those spiritual experiences, we feel that again, but somehow we separated from ourselves, from God, and it's also been called the Lucifer rebellion, where one individual wanted to be separate from God and said, you know, screw you, God, I'm going to create my own universe. I don't want anything to do with yours. I'm individual, which is kind of like a seed was planted that was a beautiful seed because we created another story, and this whole, the truth is we have the freedom, we have a certain freedom, the illusion of freedom of will, and so we create this fragmentation, and then we get, the most amazing thing is that on this planet, people are incarnate, I think almost everybody incarnates and forgets, how the heck did this happen? Where did I come from? And some people remember, and they call them bodhisattvas, there's different names for some of these people, who remember, and there's more and more of them now who remember where they came from, and they remember past lives. But it's very interesting that we would choose to forget. Like, how does a soul, it chooses to forget. It's like it seems like one of the most bravest things that a soul could do is to incarnate here, and then forget, and then get programmed. And this is where it comes into this fragmentation, the subjectivity of belief, is where we get indoctrinated into the illusion. And so we forget that we're the ones that created the story, but we forget that we created the story. So this is kind of where it goes. It's like we invent this elaborate, labyrinthine, fragmented, shattered crystal, but it's almost like the white light, a prism fragments it into all the colors. So it's kind of like that explosion was like the white light fragmented into millions and trillions of little pieces that are all little holograms reflecting the source. But in illusion, it seems like we're all separate. And so we get indoctrinated, and it's almost like the first 28 years of our lives or something. It seems like here we're born, our parents had these beliefs, our culture has these beliefs, our society, everything we see is reflecting this idea that we're separated. So it's almost like we're being programmed to forget, because I know when I was really young, I knew a lot of things in my heart. Like, I thought this was all a game. I thought it was all a trick. You know, like, well, I know there's a couple of TV shows that are like that, where people are, it's like a masquerade. The Truman Show, I guess, one of them. I felt like that when I was a little kid. I was like, what? It's a game, like everybody's playing this game. This isn't real. So I knew things that I learned to forget. So it's almost like we know so much, but then we choose to forget, and we create these elaborate stories, and then we get indoctrinated and we get programmed, and we're told that we're not lovable unless we act this way, and we get hit or conditioned, and then we get in fights, and you know, in order to find love, I have to manipulate other people. Like, that's the worst. Like when you get indoctrinated into that reality. So this is, again, being born, forgetting who we are, getting programmed into an illusion that gets all fragmented, but then something else is happening, and that is that we're starting to get little seeds, and there is a grand conspiracy going on here. But the conspiracy isn't a negative conspiracy, but when we start realizing, hey, wait, something's not right here, so everybody feels down in their core, something's not right. Something is off here, and we all know it, and we can feel it. So because we feel uneasy, we often are trying, our ego wants to band-aid that feeling with a reason. So ego wants reasons so that we can feel more secure in justifying why we feel that way. So we know something is amiss, and there's the sadness. It's almost like there's this guilt. And it's amazing how many cultures have indoctrinated this unconscious or conscious belief of sin. And a lot of religions even talking about, the original sin. And as though sin, was a bad thing. And it's like, but sin, means missing the mark. Really, that's what it means. That's the actual definition. So we feel off. But then we're separated, so we feel this longing, the sadness. And we want to know why. And so our ego wants to create a story, and it creates, the ego, our imagination is unlimited. It's infinite. So when our ego gets in service of our imagination, it creates these amazing, elaborate stories of separation. This illusion that there's so many different opposite things and that the world is against us. So this is one of the most amazing things that's happening right now, is that a lot of people are going down the rabbit hole. We're at that critical climax. A lot of people are at the critical climax in their lives when they're realizing something is not right, and now we're at that threshold, the apocalypse, the undoing, the great river, the stream. Things are moving faster, so there's a collective awareness that something's not right, and we're finding out we've been all indoctrinated or programmed, and the stories that we've been told are false. A lot of the stories about we're separate and that person is our enemy, so these are all elaborate lies, and we know that deep down, but our conscious mind doesn't always know it. So then we create these fragments. And so this goes back to our ego wanting to justify what's going on, why do I feel all ripped up inside? Maybe there's a grand conspiracy. So there is kind of a conspiracy, but it might not be the ones that a lot of the New Age awakening movements are pointing towards. But as we realize, as we wake up, that we need answers, and our ego is so ready to grab on and give us the answer to distract us from the truth. And so the way I see that sometimes is coming up with a conspiracy that the world is out to get us, everything is against us. But that again is an elaborate trick. It's there's a truth there. So now we're at this climax, and now we're realizing the truth. So little bits of truth are coming in as we undo all of the things. We're in this grand information age where we all have access to more and more knowledge. And so that knowledge is helping us. So in our hearts we feel disconnected, so we want the answers. The ego can give us the answers, or our heart, which is like a deeper truth that is not afraid. But the ego carries with it the fear of death. So the unconscious fear of death, the ego doesn't want death, so it plays elaborate tricks. But then again, our heart, which is the longing that we feel deep down inside to find peace, that peace that we want comes to us. The more we desire it, the more we get it, if we want the truth. And the truth comes in waves and in metaphors and in synchronicities. And this is where I really love Carl Jung, because Carl Jung connects to me with Course in Miracles and quantum mechanics and epigenetics. All of these things are speaking that we are the creators. We have created this world, and we're starting to undo all of these false beliefs. And so here we've got to the great fragmentation, but it seems as though all of that is now undoing itself. So this is how we get to the middle point. So is everybody with me now so far? Okay, so this is just coming up. Now, anybody want to comment on how we got here, the creation myth, or what is the grand conspiracy, because I'm alluding to a grand conspiracy here. But which conspiracy am I talking about? Does anybody have any ideas?
It's the ego.
The ego?
Dan, I read the other day a note that said, note to self, capital S self, next time you reincarnate to a strange planet, do not immediately get amnesia. Bad idea. Bad idea.
Right.
I couldn't understand it.
Next time I reincarnate to a new planet, do not get amnesia immediately. It's a bad idea. I forgot everything.
Yeah, so stay in your heart, don't forget, but it's easy to forget.
Right. Well, then there's the whole concept of projecting. So it's because what we see is coming from our mind. So
Right.
it's not in me; it's in them out there. And
Right.
There's
Right, that's one of the
wars.
grand tricks, is
The grand
projecting
tricks.
it out there and saying it's out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I heard this interview about a guy who wrote a book called The Gold Eaters, which was about the conquistadors coming into the Americas. And they came upon, of course, the Aztecs, whatever, and they had this beautiful village. There were no poor, there was no one was suffering. It was very egalitarian. And you'd think, oh my God, I've come upon nirvana, heaven on earth. That isn't what they thought. They looked at this and they said, oh, well, this is wrong. This is wrong because in the Bible it says you will always have the poor with you. They don't have any poor. This must be the Antichrist.
Right.
They said, and how? Because how? Otherwise, how could rich people give alms and get to heaven? So they had no qualms in destroying this egalitarian, perfect society, and
Right.
embracing it and
Right.
thinking, wow, wouldn't you love to live in that
Right.
place? Oh no.
Amazing,
Yeah,
amazing.
so that was what their minds did with
Right,
them.
so we sabotage what's good,
Right.
and something absolutely incredibly beautiful shows up that's utopian maybe and reflects the divine, and we immediately say, no, I can't be good because we're guilty. No, or it's like, the Antichrist, right?
Yeah, the Antichrist. And so where's the conquistador in my mind? You know, what part of me doesn't see clearly?
Right.
My take on it is, we have a very violent evolutionary path, and I think the awareness is definitely rising, but all of these myths are created, to give some false sense of security, give some, and to me, it's not a matter of reincarnation or any of those things. To me, it's just a matter of, through the evolutionary pathway I've arrived here, I have to cope with the madness. And how do I cope with the madness? And to me, it's simply awareness. How much do I have to go through to get the awareness of what's going on? Regardless of belief systems or anything, just being present. That's
Right.
my take on it.
Right, yeah, being present, and there's so many distractions along the way that'll take us off being present. And this wheel of suffering, the wheel of samsara, the wheel of karma, is when we're not present, we get thrown out and into this wheel of illusion where there's opposites. It's like this, and so it's amazing how when we have a spiritual experience, it's like the ego dies. It's a death. So that death is like unbearable to the ego. And how do you sustain yourself in this world of illusion while you're not here? You've had this awakening. So the ego is like wanting to justify and create a story to cope with it, maybe, a coping mechanism. And this quote that Carl Jung had was about religion is a defense against God. It is a defense mechanism. But I mean, I understand the metaphor there, like, because creating a fragmented system that you can contain in linear and hold on to is a paradox. So that's what Carl Jung meant by religion as a defense against God. So that's an interesting way of thinking about how our ego wants to like put things in boxes.
I think the phrase "I know nothing" is quite liberating.
I know nothing. I know nothing. That's a great one. Yeah. I think this knowing nothing is the beginning to another story. And I think this is great because with the information age, we have even more elaborate stories like that are further away from God or closer to God or closer to the source or further away from truth. And so we can choose our stories. And so now we're seeing stories that look incredibly ridiculous to some of us. And I look on the wall, I go on Facebook, I say, what are the most ridiculous stories ever? And some of those stories didn't seem ridiculous to me. So I can't remember them right now, but you can imagine different cultures think that that's ridiculous. How could you ever think that? So now there's this whole other, there's this other conspiracy that's going around that the earth is actually flat. So,
Yeah, that's right.
no, but this is an amazing thing for sure. So, you know, is any of this stuff right or wrong? And I think that we could be very upset if we think that somebody's telling a lie. It's like, that's a lie, and you're kill him. He's lying and he's hurting. Like, so we get all defensive in our ego bubbles. Like, hey, this is the truth. That person, that's not the truth. Kill them.
Well, the first guy that said the world was round, they killed him, right?
Right, right. So, and our ego is so big because we're like, everybody thought the earth was flat. And like, so we're saying the medieval people thought the earth was flat, but that's not true at all. Many, many, many people knew the earth was round. There's about, 20 or 30 ways of proving that, but then there's ways of proving the earth is flat too, I suppose.
It's all a matter of perspective.
So, but does it matter? Are we going to get caught on the little tangents of my story's true and yours is not? But that's a distraction again.
Don't you think we're in the process of creating more myths to some extent?
Yes.
And because we're still in that position of insecurity, anxiety.
Yes, so we're in the position to create more myths.
Yeah.
So if we have a great awakening, and I know that when we see grand conspiracies where somebody like Hitler or Nero or somebody did some grand thing to distract us and tell us a lie, people would say, Hitler burned down his own Reichstag and then blamed it on the Jews or whatever. Some story which apparently was true, but it's easy to get distracted and say it's the Illuminati's fault. I think what I'm trying to get at here is that the ego will like want us to say, hey, it's Dick Cheney, it's his fault, or it's Donald Rumsfeld's fault, and we want to point at the people at the top of the pyramid. But that again is a distraction. I think that's one of the biggest distractions that I'm noticing now, is the temptation that we're being a victim, the temptation to believe we're victims. Very strong temptation. So another ego trick is to say, hey, we're all victims in this, and it's true that there's been a grand lie, yes, but to blame somebody for it is the ego's way of not owning that lie and realizing that we're responsible for it as much as anybody. And that's where our power is saying, hey, this is a collective reality, I chose this, and this reflection and this pyramid, this is our own design. So to say that we're no part of that pyramid is another lie, and it's further from the truth. So the truth, when we want it, we are going to see it. And I think that now, as we reach that critical climax, more and more people desire the truth. So this is why we're seeing, they say every path leads to God. So we see in quantum mechanics and in biology and in all these fields, every field of science is now reflecting a truth that we're the creators, that an electron doesn't exist at all. It only exists in probability. How does the probability manifest? Well, every particle in the universe is in a state of superposition, or it's not determined. Nothing is determined until an observer looks, and then we project. We have a projector, and we project, and our projector is kind of like the world of illusion of parts, because those parts don't really empirically exist. They only collapse because of a projector, which can be an individual or it could be a collective projection. The collective projections are harder to notice because we take it as empirically true because we can't see that we're the ones that created it. But the path now, so I think the path now is to our awakening, undoing all of the lies, and realizing that, hey, are we going to die, or is our body going to die? Yeah, but we're not going to die. It's like we can see that we create, everything changes in our body when we choose a different reality. When we choose different realities, everything reflects that. So, anybody want, yes, you want to say something?
I heard it as sound from the beginning. I came here and I was born. I was hearing sound.
Right.
And no matter shooting or wars or what I have seen around me,
Right.
I still have been hearing sound and singing.
Right.
And through that I found even elders. I never have seen elders in Europe so
Right.
much. And they have been listening with me.
Right.
So I have been hearing that many levels are game, that people play. Everyone plays them.
Playing the games.
And I was part of it too.
You were part of the game too.
That's right, yeah.
But you were hearing the music.
I was hearing the sound.
So you knew it was a game, it wasn't personal.
But it was not was something that is intangible, that you cannot elaborate sound, you cannot put mind
Right.
in it, you cannot put whatever they call it here, ego.
Right.
You cannot put nothing in it.
No, you can't put
It is
yeah,
just
can't-
nothingness
Right.
Manifesting
Right.
itself.
Right.
And so through that, and I was also hearing inner sound.
Yeah.
So as child.
So you're that's such a blessing
Yeah.
that you were able to hear that.
That what I was having from
Right.
very beginning, saying what I am being here with this.
Right.
And what I was hearing back to the echo of the sound. The elders have been writing me from New Zealand that they can still hear the sound from the forest
Right.
in their cottages.
Right.
What we did there.
The song.
They spoke about that the sound is there.
Right. So this
Still.
is the song. You're talking about the song of the universe.
That's right. So the sound is just resonance. It's difficult to describe it, especially for me in English.
Well, it's a good thing that you can't put a finger on it.
No, I cannot put anything. I cannot
Because
put
you'd probably
anything
lose
on
it if you were to write it down.
I cannot put anything on it.
Right. Yes?
I still and again wonder, where do we really come from? I think I've asked that many times. Still don't know.
Anybody want to like pose an answer?
I could, for a quick moment. I'm just with this idea lately that we projected ourselves out of heaven. Bo was saying about projection a moment ago. We are literally in heaven, and we've projected ourselves out of heaven. And as we all know with projection, it doesn't leave our minds. We only think it does. So it's the same idea, we haven't gone anywhere. So where we came from is heaven, and we're still there. We've just had this mad idea that we could project ourselves out. So this is what we made. This is a projection.
Yeah, but what do you mean by heaven?
Heaven?
Yeah.
Heaven on earth.
I'll try.
Thanks for that.
I'll try.
Okay.
You didn't come from anywhere, you just are.
Poof. I wish I could live with that.
From our projections, you appear to be doing just fine.
Yes, think positive, eh?
But the stories help us sometimes to have a story so that we can relate to what happened.
See,
So
stories for me are the way you collect beliefs. So what are beliefs for? You're not actually supposed to believe in them.
Right, what are beliefs for?
They're just beliefs.
They're just beliefs.
So what are they?
You don't have to believe in them. They don't have to
You're not
like.
supposed to believe in them.
It doesn't have to be
They're
real
not
and
there to be
empirically true.
believed in. They're there as stories to wake up something inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
It's the difference between the belief and knowing, and having a sense of mystery, a sense of knowing inside the belief and the mystery.
But I don't want to knowing or believe. I want facts.
You want facts.
The floor is hard.
If you want facts, then you can manifest facts. This is what's amazing is that we can manifest facts.
That's how religion was created, because people had doubt and they needed facts, something to cling to, right? So they made this.
Yeah.
Well, you know, that's what it is. It's an illusion.
What I can't hear.
Well, it's the whole thing is just, I think personally, a big illusion. That's why they created religion, because they wanted facts. People wanted substance, right? So they could cling to it, right? I mean, unity, like, it's the unity within yourself, right? In regards to the duality between your negative and your positives, your reflections. With your opposite would be a male. Mine opposite would be a woman, right? So marriage from the alchemical perspective is surrendering yourself to your opposite, which is your ego, right? Which is that marriage with you giving birth to your oneness.
So
right.
I'm not the
I
only
mean, that's why angels are hermaphrodites. Well, it's slaying your dragon. It's slaying your dragon, right? That's why the damsel. These are all stories. Like your damsel is in the tallest castle in the smallest room, and you have this armor off, right? But if you really want to slay your dragon, you have to take your armor off, right? Because you don't have to protect yourself from yourself, right? That's the whole, like, you know.
So I'm not the only one who's questioning where we come from. I should start another religion.
Well, if you look at it from an evolutionary perspective, I think we were like once really hairy, and we helped each other out by picking fleas off each other's backs and stuff like that. And sometimes when we got upset and we really wanted to express ourselves, we threw our feces at each other. Right. So I mean, it evolved over, we were at the right place at the right time, and we had maybe a really good banana strain, and we started walking upright. And,
hey, so I have a whole bunch of really good quotes that we could look at. I thought, hey, there's some really good quotes. I went on the internet and I found really good quotes that are reflecting, I think, higher truth. Just little simple things from Course in Miracles and from Carl Jung.
Can I add something first?
Please add something.
Brian wants
Can you
to.
move that screen a bit? We can't see it.
Yeah, I can read what it says, because these are just
Yeah, please read it.
quotes, right? So nobody really has to see the screen because it's really short liners. But you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the question of facts, wanting facts, and it brings up the thought of the way of being in the world, where there's on one side we want to understand, we want to know, we want to have facts, we want to have things, evidence to back up our beliefs. But then I like the other side as well, which is about the phenomenological way of being. Dan and I talk about this a lot. To be a phenomenologist is to go about your life in the world in a way of curiosity, observing what we see around us, being curious about it, asking questions, and wondering about the phenomenon of everything. And so in that way, and we talk about this too in science, that it seems that scientists have lost their phenomenological self, where they're no longer approaching it with curiosity and wonder and question, but needing to have this evidence to back it up, which can be very limiting. It puts it into a box. Whereas
it is tricky, isn't
curiosity, it keeps it open.
Right.
So it's it comes down to this state of being.
I know nothing.
Yeah, and that's
right.
just what Michael just said. I know nothing. Approaching it with
that's exactly right. I know nothing.
I'm curious.
And you have to have that bit of I know nothing to know anything.
To know everything.
To know everything. You know nothing to know everything.
Zero.
And so one of the quests of science, one of the spiritual quests of science was this idea of the scientific method, which meant that no, we'll just be the phenomenologist. Isn't that what science was supposed to be? But we know now, like, every path can create its own religion. Like, science can be religious, and it certainly is in a lot of ways. Because now we're creating we don't want to be phenomenologists like, oh no, there's evidence now that's against my belief. And so I have to mask out that and ignore it, ignore evidence. So don't bother me with facts. My mind is already made up.
Isn't that what happens with politics, right?
The same thing with politics.
It's a separation with politics where,
right.
And when you came back to saying being victimized.
Right.
Well, that also creates a polarization of the other.
Right.
So it creates an illusion of the other side of the political spectrum being your enemy.
Right. Exactly.
And we were talking last night about how the right and left wing belong to the same bird.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So if you had someone from the opposite wing of you, say you had like a conservative explain what their belief system is, they would probably say something like, it's traditional and I believe in upholding the traditions of society, and they're all things that anyone would say are very reasonable.
Right.
Right? But
well,
then
this is amazing.
We make them the enemy because we think that other things belong to their belief system, which they don't necessarily.
It's an amazing thing. It's amazing at our cores. If we're able to communicate, then we notice that our core is, hey, we have the same belief. Yeah. How is it that we create a distraction where we think we're enemies?
Instead of looking for the common ground.
Instead of looking for the common ground. So a lot of these political ideologies are kind of like branches from the same trunk of the tree. And when we will notice, if we study different political ideologies, their tree is at the base. It's the same. Like, yes.
The important is, where is our heart?
Where is our heart?
Do we hear our heart?
Do we hear our heart?
When we live or whatever. Belief,
right. Exactly. Exactly.
Where we are coming
That's
from.
it. That's it. That's exactly right. So, you want to say something?
Oh yeah, it seems like this shift that we're going through now is transmuting from being in your head to in your heart.
Yes.
Away from egotistical knowledge to spiritual knowledge.
Yes. Yes. So the quickening that the Hopi elders talk about, the great river, the great wind, how there's everything speeding up. Speeding up. And the more we try and hold on, the more our arms will get ripped off and we'll die because we're unwilling to go with the great flow, the great river. So things are speeding up. And I want to get to some of these quotes because I want to see what people think of these quotes. And what I'm getting to is there is a grand conspiracy, and it's a grand conspiracy to wake us up. So our unconscious, the deep unconscious part of ourselves wants to wake us up to truth. So that's another conspiracy. And it's a conspiracy that I'm noticing is that when I'm in my heart, everything is reflecting a greater truth. And so here's a quote here. It says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So until you make the unconscious conscious, it'll direct your life and you'll call it fate. What does that mean, do you think?
What does that mean?
We don't know because it's unconscious.
We can't control it though. You can't control your unconscious, so until you bring it up from that deeper level to your conscious mind, it will command you.
Right. So Carl Jung talks about this conspiracy he noticed when he was working with patients. And the conspiracy was that the shadow part of ourselves, the part that we're not willing to acknowledge, will constantly populate itself in the outside world as destiny. So in other words, when we don't confront certain shadow figures and issues, we're going to constantly see reflections of what we're hiding in other people. So our unconscious beliefs will keep coming at us. And if we're a phenomenologist, we'll realize, where did that synchronicity come from? Why did all these bad things happen to me? And it's like, it's amazing the number of synchronicities that a person will have that'll be like somebody knocking at the door, hey, wake up, wake up, wake up. And it's like, if we can see that we're the directors of a lot of these stories, if we're a phenomenologist, maybe we can answer the door. So, you know, why does this person keep doing this thing to me that's bad? And you realize it's because you have an unconscious belief that you did that to yourself, or that's you. You're judging, all these people are judging you, but you're judging yourself. So that's what I think the meaning of that is. Any other ideas of what this means?
Well said.
Okay, thanks.
I don't think we can answer the question.
Okay, so I've got another quote here. It says, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. So one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious.
It's about confronting your demons, I guess.
Yeah, it's about confronting the demons.
Yeah, and he's a psychologist, so
And he's just
obviously
like,
he would believe that you need to really confront those.
That's right, and this is why his famous line was, "The demons are really your angels," because they're trying they're trying to help you out, trying to help you heal your shadow, the wounded self.
It reminds me of a mentor who said to me once, "Oh, Ray, you're like this wonderful daddy inside by the fire with all your cherub-like children glistening brightly. And it's time you let your dark children in from the blizzard to warm themselves by the fire."
Wow, that's right. And that's right. And there's a line in the Course in Miracles that says, "As long as a single slave shall walk the earth, we'll never find our truth, our freedom. We'll never be free as long as a single slave walks the earth," because we're all fragments of the one. And as long as we're judging or not helping one part of the sonship or the childhood, then we're not free, because we're all one. Yeah, it's a beautiful line.
It takes a village to destroy a child.
It takes a village to destroy a child?
Yeah, like they said.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
It's like the opposite of it takes a village to...
Right.
It's also true.
They're both true. In other words, if the child is not together, then there's some failing in the village.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not supported, like if you could.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if there's some person left out in the cold on the street, then it means that we're wounded.
Somehow our village is failing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It reminds, like tomorrow is Carnival, that's like in Trinidad and,
right.
and maybe Mardi Gras and all that, and I just think of how like, there's the wildness of the costumes and the colors and like, you know, and the demons and everything that comes out.
Right, that's right.
And it was kind of started because I guess it's the party before Lent, right? And so I always find it funny that you've got all this Christianity with all the angels in white and all that,
right?
And yet they're the ones who perpetuated slavery. So this is like the darkness is coming up in the carnival.
Right. Always trying to avoid the darkness.
Yeah.
Yet there's cultures that have celebrations of the darkness, of the shadows.
Yeah.
Because that's such a freeing, such a beautiful thing to let out your demons, express it, put the mask on. And I know was it in Switzerland? They have the Morgan stripe or something like that, where everybody, for a week, they put on different faces, and they put on the shadow figures they're most afraid of, and they create masks, and they even go to work with these masks on. So there's different cultures around the world that are celebrating their shadows. Like a shaman must confront their shadows, right? Yeah. So yeah, it would be beautiful to sort of wrap up this, and I have there's probably 100 quotes here that are really beautiful. The best way to predict the future is to create it. The best way to predict the future is to create it.
Yeah.
Right.
To be it.
To be it, exactly.
To be in the present moment.
Right.
I thought it said to protect the future. That works too.
Oh, right. That works too. Absolutely.
Protect and predict.
Ego.
The ego is the mind's belief that it is completely on its own. That's a Course in Miracles. Ego is the mind's belief that it is completely on its own.
Dan, what was the acronym you had for ego? I think that's really
this is something that made sense, and I remember that edge got out. Ego stands for edging God out.
Huh.
And I know that Wayne Dyer said that, and that was something that totally I had already connected with that acronym, edge got out, like get out of the way, you know. It's a beautiful acronym, I think. What quantum physics teaches us is that everything we thought was physical is not physical. So nothing is physical, it's all in a state of superposition, it's up to us. So if we're the creators of this story, you know, everything is telling us, hey, we're the creators. We could be at peace. We can all have utopia right now. Just by realizing, hey, there's nothing to be afraid of. Our destiny is truth. So be a phenomenologist. When so-called bad things happen, if we react to them, then it makes them seem real in illusion. If we're fighting, you can't, like, how can you have a fight if one person is completely unconditionally loving and surrenders to truth? Like, you need to have enemies to fight. So when stuff comes up, hey, let's be a phenomenologist and connect deep within our hearts. Find the truth within us and realize that we're all one song, and be here in the heart, and we'll know what the truth is. Yeah, and listen to the song, because we all know that there's a song deep down inside that's going to help us. It's all about desire. So we desire to have absolute oneness and truth. It will come to us because we're also creators. We created this world, we can undo it, make it whatever we want. Mm-hmm. So, and now is the time that it's going to be fun. You know, we can do whatever we want. We're beautiful creatures of unconditional love. Let's share. Let's heal. Let's become healed. And let's remember we are healed. Yeah. So I think that's kind of how I can wrap all this up. And if anybody else wants to say something.
It takes, to listen to your heart, it takes courage.
Yeah.
So we need to stop behaving like cowards.
Right.
And there's strength in vulnerability.
Oh yeah, for sure, right.
We need to be vulnerable.
That's
yes.
Everybody, right.
Yes. And it takes a real, you know, they say a real man doesn't cry or whatever. No, it actually is the opposite.
Totally.
It takes someone who's...
Well, that's what I mean about, like, you know, to listen to your heart, it takes courage. And
yeah.
it engulfs
that's
all
right.
that, right? I mean,
right.
To somebody who's listening to their ego, that's...
Right. It takes courage.
To surrender that
right.
in yourself.
It takes a lot of courage to say to whoever some dictator is, to say, I am that.
Yeah, I am you am I.
Yeah.
And that's heaven on earth, right? It's what that is, right?
Yeah.
23, 24.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
To open curtains?
Yeah, we can open the curtains now. I've got 100 more quotes here, but that's okay.
Dan, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks. Absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.